Many men struggle with rejection, not because they lack effort, but because they approach the moment the wrong way. Instead of building a natural connection, they move too quickly, creating pressure where there should be ease. When pressure enters the interaction, attraction often disappears. But when the approach is done correctly, something different happens. She doesn't feel cornered or forced into a decision. Instead, she becomes more open, more engaged, and naturally leans closer. The truth is, most men are not afraid of intimacy itself. What they truly fear is rejection. That moment when everything seems to shift, when the energy drops and the connection suddenly feels cold. That fear causes hesitation, overthinking, and sometimes even awkward behavior that disrupts the flow. But what if there was a way to approach intimacy without creating that tension? A way that feels natural, confident, and aligned with how attraction actually develops. When you understand this, the dynamic changes completely, and the interaction begins to feel effortless rather than forced. There is a different way to approach this that doesn't rely on pressure or force, but on understanding how connection naturally builds. Instead of trying to push for a specific outcome, you begin to work with the emotional flow of the moment. This shift alone removes a lot of the tension that usually leads to rejection. When your approach feels calm and natural, it changes how she experiences the interaction. The key is realizing that attraction is not something you demand, it's something you allow to develop. When you stop trying to control the outcome, you create space for her to feel comfortable. And comfort is what opens the door to deeper connection. Without it, even the strongest attraction can fade quickly. This is not about manipulation or trying to trick someone into feeling something. It's about understanding how emotions guide decisions. When you align your behavior with that understanding, everything begins to feel smoother. The interaction flows better, the energy feels lighter, and the connection becomes something that both of you experience, rather than something you try to force into existence. Before going any further, there is one idea that changes everything once you truly understand it. Women are not rejecting intimacy itself. What they are reacting to is the emotional experience connected to it. If the moment feels uncomfortable, rushed, or uncertain, the answer will naturally be no. But when the experience feels right, when it feels calm, safe, and aligned, the answer doesn't need to be forced. It happens on its own. This is where most men get confused. They focus on the action instead of the feeling behind the action. They think the way they ask is the problem, when in reality it is the emotional environment they have created. If that environment is tense or pressured, even the perfect words won't work. But if the environment feels natural and inviting, even simple words can lead to a deeper connection. Once you understand that everything is driven by how she feels in that moment, your approach changes. You stop trying to convince, and you start creating the kind of experience that naturally leads her to want more. Now it becomes important to understand how these decisions actually happen. Most men approach intimacy as if it's something that can be decided logically, as if saying the right words at the right time will guarantee the outcome. But that's not how it works. For women, the decision is rarely based on logic alone. It is guided by emotion, by how the moment feels, and by how safe and connected she feels with you. This is why timing and energy matter more than the exact question you ask. If you move too quickly, before that emotional foundation is built, it creates resistance. If you come across as unsure or anxious, that energy is felt and it affects how she responds. And if you try to push the interaction forward without allowing the feeling to develop, it often leads to rejection. Understanding this changes your entire approach. Instead of focusing on getting a yes, you begin focusing on creating the right emotional conditions. When she feels comfortable, understood, and not pressured, the decision becomes easier for her, because it aligns with how she feels rather than forcing her to think it through. To really understand this, you need to see the common mistakes that quietly lead to rejection. Many men approach the moment too directly, asking for something before the emotional connection has had time to develop. Others move too quickly, trying to escalate before she feels fully comfortable. Some carry nervous energy that shows through their tone and body language, and others skip the step of building emotional tension altogether. Each of these creates a subtle form of pressure, even if that was never the intention. When pressure is present, it interrupts the natural flow of attraction. Instead of feeling drawn in, she becomes aware that a decision is being pushed toward her. That awareness activates doubt, hesitation, and sometimes even discomfort. The connection shifts from something natural to something that feels forced. What makes the difference is understanding that attraction needs space to build. When you slow down, stay present, and allow the interaction to develop gradually, you remove that pressure. And once pressure is removed, the connection has room to grow in a way that feels natural for both of you. There is a deeper layer to this that most men overlook, and it completely changes how you approach intimacy. Attraction for men is often immediate and driven by what they see in the moment. But for women, attraction usually develops over time. It builds through a series of emotional experiences, small moments that gradually create a sense of comfort, curiosity, and connection. This is why a woman might feel neutral at first, and then, over time, begin to feel drawn to a man she initially overlooked. It's not inconsistency, it's the natural progression of how her attraction forms. Each interaction adds something to the overall feeling, and when enough of those moments align, her interest becomes stronger without needing to be forced. When you understand this, you stop rushing the process. You begin to see that intimacy is not about creating a sudden spark, but about allowing that spark to grow naturally. By focusing on building those small emotional moments, you create a foundation that makes deeper connection feel effortless, because it is developing in the way it's meant to. Once you understand how attraction builds, your focus shifts to how you move within the interaction. Instead of trying to force a moment, you begin to guide it naturally. One of the most powerful adjustments you can make is to stop asking directly for intimacy. Direct questions often place her in a position where she has to make a conscious decision, and that decision is where hesitation usually appears. When something feels like a direct request, it creates a sense of pressure, even if your intention is good. Pressure leads to resistance, and resistance often leads to rejection. But when you approach it differently, when you create a feeling instead of asking a question, the dynamic changes completely. She no longer feels like she is being pushed toward a decision. Instead, she feels like she is stepping into something on her own. This subtle shift makes a big difference. When the moment feels natural and unforced, she becomes more comfortable following the flow of the interaction. And when she feels like the choice is hers, she is far less likely to pull away. Another powerful shift happens when you stop trying to move things forward and instead allow a little space to exist in the interaction. Most men think that to keep attraction alive, they need to keep leaning in, talking more, touching more, or pushing the moment forward. But constant pressure, even in small ways, can interrupt the natural rhythm between two people. When you ease back slightly, not in a cold or distant way, but in a calm and relaxed manner, something interesting happens. The pressure disappears, and in that space, her awareness of the connection becomes stronger. She begins to feel the moment more clearly because nothing is being forced on her. This creates a natural shift where she starts to engage more on her own. She may move closer, initiate touch, or deepen the conversation without being prompted. It doesn't feel like a game, it feels like a natural exchange of energy. By allowing that space, you give the connection room to grow, and that often leads to a stronger, more genuine response. Another subtle but powerful shift happens when you focus less on asking for a decision and more on guiding the emotional direction of the moment. Instead of putting her in a position where she has to say yes or no, you allow her to stay connected to how she feels. This removes the pressure of making a choice and keeps the interaction flowing naturally. When you bring attention to the connection rather than the outcome, she becomes more aware of the experience itself. She starts to notice the comfort, the ease, and the energy between you. That awareness strengthens the moment without needing to force anything forward. It feels less like a request and more like a shared experience that is unfolding on its own. This approach also creates a sense of control for her. She doesn't feel pushed or cornered, and that makes her more open to staying in the moment. When someone feels emotionally in control, they relax. And when they relax, they are more likely to lean into what they are feeling rather than pull away from it. As everything comes together, the biggest shift is in how you see the moment itself. Instead of treating intimacy like something you have to ask for or secure, you begin to recognize it as something that develops naturally when the right conditions are present. Your role is not to force it, but to allow it. When the connection feels right, when the energy is calm, and when there is no pressure, the moment begins to unfold on its own. Rather than pushing for a specific outcome, you acknowledge what is already there. You stay present, you respond to the energy, and you let the interaction evolve without rushing it. This removes the tension that usually leads to rejection and replaces it with a sense of ease that both of you can feel. When you approach it this way, everything becomes simpler. You're no longer chasing a response, you're creating an experience. And when that experience feels genuine, comfortable, and natural, the connection deepens without effort. If this changed your perspective, support the channel by liking, subscribing, and sharing your thoughts in the comments.